Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And today we have a very special guest at a very special time on our show. We've got writer, director, producer Peter Dukes. Peter, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It is our absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us. And you know what? Let's start with escape room. We have limited time, and there are some very specific questions that I want to ask you about escape room. The most prevalent question, and this came up when I saw the movie several years ago, is around the same time, there are three different movies with the same title. So when you meet someone and you're like, yeah, I wrote and directed Escape Room, do you have to go a step further in explaining which one is yours?
It's happened. More people than you'd think mistake it for the Sony version,
Mm-hmm.
which I'd love, but
Yeah.
no, no. Yeah, I wrote that spec in 2016, I believe, early 2016. And at the time, at least, we were the only project going with that name and with that concept. But I knew it wouldn't be long, so I really wanted to get a jump start on it. So everything with that project moved really, really fast. At times faster than I would have liked, but it moved fast, and it was during production slash production that I caught wind of the Sony version that was coming together, and then of the other Escape Room, which was another indie film. Don't remember who directed it, but same title, same overall concept, and it kind of became an informal race as to who was to come out first. Sony wasn't worried about us, but certainly
Mm-hmm.
the other independent film we were trying to get out first. And we beat them internationally, but they opened domestically before us. So it led to some confusion. There were times where they would do a review on my film or on the other person's film, but they would swap the cast,
Yeah. Yeah.
or things like that. And I was just like, oh man, I knew it was going to happen,
Yeah.
but it just happens. And with escape rooms at the time, they were really popular, so I wasn't surprised. I kind of figured something like that might happen, and it did. And you roll with it. What are you going to do?
Exactly. You go with it. And to give you credit, on IMDb at least, your escape room is listed as number one as in regard to the titling. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about escape rooms. Before I actually watched your film, I didn't know that such places existed. Where people get locked into a room and they're locked away with puzzle pieces, and they have 55 minutes to an hour to find their way out. And I could see the intrigue in it. It's fun. And you can design it for people who like to be scared. You can
Oh,
design it for wannabe Sherlock Holmes people out there. Uh,
yeah.
how prevalent were you? I mean, how familiar were you with escape rooms when it came down to writing the script for your version?
Familiar enough. I'd been to a few, and as you said, there's a variety of types. The type I obviously was the most interested in was horror centric rooms, which at the time were still fairly new, but they were just starting to blow up. So you were finding all sorts of different kinds based on certain movies, based on certain genres, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's an hour. Sometimes, I mean, they can come up with whatever
Yeah.
time limit they want. And some of them were fairly simple in the beginning, and they became very innovative. They became pretty technical, and they evolved. But for my particular story, I wanted to write something that would tap into that kind of energy and that popularity, something that I could sell easily. At the time, I was looking for a spec that would sell really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And so I designed that project, half artistic, half business, to get a film made. It's hard to get a movie made.
Oh
And so
yeah.
I designed that project to be something that was budget friendly, simple hook, strong hook, easy to produce and all these kind of things. And it turned out to be the case. I got a yes almost right away, and they had the money for it within like 48 hours, which is,
Wow.
to me at least, sort of
That's
unheard of,
yeah. Yeah. Trust me,
right?
it is.
And it came together very fast, and we went from there, and we were pretty strapped for cash, so our escape room in the movie is fairly simple compared to what you would experience now.
Mm-hmm.
But it did the trick. It was just more about atmosphere than anything else. And we pumped it out, and for such a small film, it really was a pretty small film. It did really well. I mean, it sold worldwide. It had theatrical releases, which kind of blew my mind. I didn't really picture it as a theatrical release level movie, but internationally, it had several theatrical releases and opened up in the U.S. on Redbox and did really well for a movie of its scale, I thought. So, I mean, it was a learning experience in some ways and was a blast in other ways. At the time, I'd done a whole slew of short films, but that was my first feature.
Okay.
So it was a different animal for me. So it was just overall the experience was rewarding in a number of ways.
What I really love, besides the story in the movie, is that you brought back some familiar faces.
Yeah.
Sean Young, Skeet Ulrich, Billy from Scream. Did you have them in mind when you were writing their characters? How hard was them to get them on board to do your escape room?
I didn't have them in mind when I wrote the script because I wasn't exactly sure how far I could take this. I knew I was aiming for it to be a sub-$1 million type of film, like a real true indie.
Yeah.
But I didn't know exactly what our scale would be. We got pretty lucky with Skeet Ulrich. I wasn't involved in the discussions to bring him out, but he was one of only a handful of names. I think pretty much got the first names they asked for. They did talk to a couple of other people, and it didn't work out for scheduling conflict reasons or whatever the reasons might have been. But he was available. He was interested, and I had never met him before. I had enjoyed his work, of course, but I met him and was instantly impressed. He's just a really good guy, a professional. Never blew a line, knew his blocking, studied the script, asked good questions, asked tough questions, which I appreciated as a director. I mean, he did his homework. That's all you can ask for. Sean Young was among a few names that they considered, and she was very open to doing it as well. I had, a phone call with her over the phone. She was into it. We flew her out for just a day or two to do her part, and that was it. And they rolled with it really well because it was a crazy production, very fast. It's the kind of production where I'd love to have had time to get more coverage or to get 10, 15 takes, all these kind of things, right? It was very often kind of like my short films. Like, hey, we got time for 3 or 4 takes, sometimes 2 takes, and then we got to keep moving.
Yeah.
So, they rolled with that very well and moved and kept up with the pace for the rest of us and gave us some good performances. I'm still waiting for that opportunity to shoot a film that I have longer than like 10 or 11 days to do. But you work with what you have. That's
exactly
the life of a filmmaker, at least for me. So, it was a pleasure working with him, and I was particularly impressed with Skeet. He was a true professional.
I tell you what, his character, the way you're describing him, he was amazing in the film. The way he portrayed his character, a guy who's in financial trouble. This is his business, the moral dilemma that he's faced when the camera goes down, the liability he could face. I mean, I've never talked to him, but the way you're describing him is the way that we saw him portray his character, which his character's name is Blair, right? In the movie? Or Blaine. What is it? Blair or Blaine? I forgot, but he played his character perfectly.
It was Bryce.
Bryce. There you go.
Bryce. And he did, again, he didn't have to do the movie. He's a working guy. He agreed for whatever reason. I'm sure he liked the script, and I'm a perfectionist. I wrote it and directed it, and I still like the script better than I like my end result. But you do the best you can. But he responded to something in the material and something in the project, and he came on board, which we appreciated. You're not always gonna get that, and he could have come in and taken a paycheck and just kind of dribbled off his lines and went home, and you still have his name on the poster, and it still does its job. Like you know, I don't get to sales agents and all that kind of stuff. But no, he came in and he worked hard. I mean, he really did study the script and all those kind of things. And I mean, what can you do but appreciate that?
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the box, the demonic box. The movie starts off somewhere in the Middle East, burying the box. The box ends up somewhere in America in an antique shop run by Sean Young. Was that always in your mind when you were writing the script? Did you play with different ideas? Am I going to use a demon? Am I going to use a serial killer? Which you sort of blended to. But
Yeah,
anyway, how did you come about that demon trapped
the
in a box?
my original spec did involve a MacGuffin, like a little skull box, but it was much more streamlined. My original spec opens with the kids, the teenagers, in the waiting room of the escape room attraction, and the movie ends with, well, I won't spoil it. It ends sooner than the movie ends. Those were added on scenes. You get producers who have ideas and different notes, and they throw out the notes, and you work together to come up with something that everyone's hopefully happy with, and you throw it on. So that entire opening didn't come into existence until after we were done shooting the main film.
Now, looking back on that opening, do you have any regrets? Like, did this really need to be in there? I think I think it does. But as you said, you're a perfectionist. Looking back on the final product, you're like, maybe this movie could have done without this opening scene.
I think the opening scene was okay. I could have done without some other scenes that were put in. I'm being fairly candid, but it's been long enough now. Years. There's certainly some scenes I think were fairly redundant, and I was a first time feature director, so I only have so much leverage. So we had some talks with the producers, and I won some battles and I lost some battles, and that's just kind of how the process goes sometimes. So overall, I've always been very happy with the film. But is there a part of me that would I change some things? Probably.
Yeah.
But probably most filmmakers feel that way about many of their films. If they could go back, they tweak some things here and there.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
That's just the way it is. Now, the way the demon is portrayed after they open the box. He steals the box. Well, doesn't steal. He leaves money. Sean Young's character warns him there's evil inside. He's like, yeah, whatever. This is going to help bring my escape room back to number one. He was just like almost drawn to it. The box is placed in the room. It's opened up. The demon escapes. And then we get to meet Stitchface, which is the name that is given to the actor who is in the room with the participants, who's just an actor as in any haunted attraction, but he becomes possessed by that dark demon. And then I got to tell you, Peter, from that point on, the actor who portrayed Stitchface, I mean, talk about some creepy ass shit. He was just creepy, the way he was toying with them. I mean, this was a demon, a pure evil force in every sense of the word. Were you satisfied with how that came out?
Yeah, by and large, yeah. And all credit goes to Taylor, he was the actor who played the guy, because he's coming in there all day with us, and we built the escape room on a stage, and he's in there all day wearing this uncomfortable burlap sack style mask. Half the time he's got blood on him, or he's lost an eye, and he's got to take away his vision. Like, he's going through all this physical stuff, and you only see his face in a wide shot for about 45 seconds before they go into the room. And
When
other
he's
than
taking
that,
a smoke break.
he's taking a smoke break. So, I mean, and for an actor, I give him credit for that. You know what I mean? It's fun to play Stitchface, but it's not like he really, got to breathe freely like all the other actors in the room. Physically, I'm sure it was quite demanding on him, and he never complained. I'm trying to think if he ever even said a word about it. I don't think he did. Because it would get smoky in there, it could get hot in there, and the hours are long and all that kind of stuff. But me and him discussed how we wanted that character to be, and I knew there wouldn't be any talking, so it was all body language, things like that. And so we had discussions about the way we wanted to do that. It was, in some respects, going to be in most respects, really going to be a very low-key performance, very restrained and very subtle. It wasn't going to be
Not too over the top.
Not too over the top by design. And there were discussions to have that happen, but I didn't really want it to be that way. I wanted it to be sort of a Michael Myers, but with a little more gamesmanship. You know,
Hmm.
he was playing games with them.
Oh, yeah, he was toying with
But
them.
other than that, he was very unemotional and very patient and didn't say a word, all those kind of things. You know, so that was a lot of fun to play with. And it's funny, the you can tell it's a small room in the movie, but I don't think you really think about it a lot. But when we first built the room, it turned out to be much smaller than we anticipated.
Mm.
Just based on the parameters of the stage we were working on and the time we had to build it and so on and so forth. So I was like, oh man, like this is a this is a really small room because I have to dole it out with the unspooling chain.
Yeah.
Like anything else, you work with it, you cover it up, and I don't think anyone even notices. But it
Mm-mm.
was a very small room, so body language had to be paramount. It was a strong part of the dynamic, and I think Taylor did a great job with it.
He did. He did. He played that part perfectly. No dialogue, just his body actions. He was toying with them with the coins. Just to give you one example, uh, do you think it was the demon's intention to let that last girl go, or did he just? Do you think the demon wanted to kill her as well? Because he gave her the coins, or was that just the demon just screwing with her, or what?
I have my own reasons, and I'm sure I like the fact that people could take something different out of it. For me personally, I don't think he planned for her to get out of the room. I
Okay.
think he enjoyed giving her hope and letting it dangle
Yeah.
because it was the kind of spirit that feeds off of fear and feeds off of that just thick, dark energy. So I think the more fear he evoked, the stronger he got and the more powerful he felt, and so on and so forth. I don't think he planned for her to get away.
Yeah.
But, there was talk of there being a sequel. I don't see it happening, but certainly I think he would be looking to correct that mistake at
Yeah.
some point in the future.
Another aspect that is I love before everything came to a head in that room and it was revealed that they're in trouble were between the two guys and the horror references that they were throwing back and forth. Watching this film, you can tell that the person who wrote and directed this film is a true horror fan. Okay, with writing that dialogue, down to the reference to Halloween 5 when Michael Myers shed a tear. When I rewatched it again a couple of days ago, and that dialogue when he says Michael Myers cried in part 5, and the other guy's like, no, he didn't. I'm like, yeah, he did. He did. He was, and I just love that dialogue back and forth. Is that something that you insisted be in the script?
I didn't really have to insist. That was there from the get go, and of the variety of changes that were kind of flying at me, that was never really one that was on the table. So that one kind of stuck around. Um, 90% of what's in there was written, but we did eventually free him up to ad lib quite a bit. My original script had one profanity in it,
Hmm.
just one. And as the actors were trying to be terrified of what was transpiring in there, they really had a hard time keeping it realistic. They're like, "You got to let us loose here a little bit." And I said,
Okay.
"Okay." So they started to ad lib, and I let them run with it, and that's where all of a sudden there's profanity everywhere in the movie. They were a great bunch, and they enjoy movies and horror movies, and the characters enjoy horror movies, and a lot of people in the horror community like to chat about horror movies, right? It's like that's
Yeah.
part of the community. So it was always part of the DNA of the script to make it at least partially self-aware of what it is and to embrace it.
You can't avoid missing the irony in having two guys throwing horror references back and forth, and then having Skeet in the movie, who played Billy
Oh
in
yeah,
Scream, and we all know about the horror references in the
yeah,
1996 version of Scream, so you can't miss that,
yeah,
coincidence, whatever,
yeah.
right there in the movie. Now we only have a little bit of time left. You created a short a couple of years back called "They Watch." Now that is currently in post production. Uh, you explained to us your role in the feature that's yet to come out? Are you directing, writing? What was your role in They Watch?
They Watch came from a short film, as you noted, and I have several features in development that came from my short films because there was a lot of kernels there that I wanted to expand upon and have fun with. And They Watch was one I felt had some potential. And so I tried to get that one sold for a couple of years and finally fell into the hands of these guys over at a company called Everything's Fire. They're based out of Pennsylvania. Solid guys, authentic guys, passionate about film, passionate about horror. And, I knew it would be a small production, not super small, but small enough if it went through them. But I really liked what they were bringing to the table. So I kind of, went on a leap of faith and let the project go with them as the writer. It was a spec of mine is all it was.
Okay.
And then it took about a year and a half for that production to come to fruition. And I eventually became an executive producer on the film as well. And yeah, they just finished photography, 2 weeks ago. And they're into post-production now. And I think, they're moving along pretty quickly. I don't know if it'll be released by year's end, but I believe it will be completed by year's end. And that's got a great cast too. And being on a film set is hard. It's kind of like going to war sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a blast. Sometimes it's just tough.
Yeah.
This was one of those productions where everyone really was on a team together, which was nice to see. The chemistry was great. Even though the hours were long, in a script like this, there's a lot of, night shoots. I have to apologize to the actors. There's a lot of night shoots and it kind of screws them up, but everyone got along great. The cast and crew became kind of like a family, and that's always nice to see. So I have high hopes for how this thing turns out.
Did you guys have a bigger budget for They Watch as opposed to Escape Room?
Smaller.
Okay.
But the original aims were to go higher. But for a variety of reasons on the producer's part, they needed to move production up. They kind of had to.
Okay.
And to do that, when you limit your time to find financiers, realistically, you got to limit what the budget's going to be. If you want more money, it's going to take more time. So they ended up going with a smaller budget, but because they're based in Pennsylvania, they got all sorts of things reduced or even for free that you could just never get in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So despite the limitations, they did a really great job. I'll put it to you this way: you'll never know that it was shot for as little as it probably was shot for.
That's great. Those people who watch me, they know that I love paranormal horror subgenre. Escape Room, because of the demon element, it does fall a little bit under the paranormal. You have a demon that escapes. It possesses a person. That person starts butchering people. So for me, it's much more of a paranormal film as opposed to a slasher flick. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, They Watch is another paranormal film. As a filmmaker, or, not even as a filmmaker, as a horror fan, do you have a greater appreciation for the paranormal / supernatural subgenre?
To date, I haven't really ever done a true slasher. The horror films I've gotten made, at least, I have plenty that are not yet produced that run the gamut. I just love a good story, and that can be in and out of horror, and it can be a variety of genres, within horror. But a lot of my projects, and They Watch would be one of them, where it's, more a family drama mystery with a strong horror backdrop than an out-and-out horror picture. And I do have a soft spot for the paranormal, creatures and entities and all sorts of fun stuff like that. I've always loved that. So that's commonly been in my projects, and it'll be in They Watch too. It's definitely there as well. I don't have a particular love or dislike for the slasher film. If I were to find the right story to tell a slasher film in a new way, that's fun and kind of turns the subgenre on its head, I absolutely would jump on that.
It's so hard
It
because
is.
it was all the rage back in the late 70s and the 80s. And it's just so hard to come up with something unique nowadays as opposed to other, subgenres in the horror realm that are popping up left and right. The big thing, the big wave right now is these psychological horror thrillers, which I love as well.
Sure.
I tell everybody guts, gore, blood doesn't impress me when it comes to a movie. I mean, yeah, they're kind of fun to watch, whether it's a zombie movie or a slasher flick. Yeah, everyone can enjoy a nice zombie kill, But when it comes to a deep dive on characters and storytelling and good acting, that's where filmmakers show their mettle. And
Sure.
and I definitely like that. Now, now that you mentioned Escape Room was your first feature director debut. How did it feel like being behind the camera as a director? Is it something you want to do more of? You are an executive producer and They Watch. Do you enjoy that? Moving forward, I know you want to have your hands in everything and do a little bit of everything, but having had a taste now of different seats behind the camera, which one fascinates you the most right now?
It tends to change over the years due to how I started getting into filmmaking and having to do a lot of it myself. I was always writing, directing, producing, sometimes editing, catering. I was doing everything, right? So from the very get-go, I had my trifecta. I was always writing, directing, producing, and I enjoyed all of them. They all have their different challenges. I would say, I always have really enjoyed writing. Writing is just me in a room creating whatever world I want, and it's hard to top that. I get tremendous satisfaction from directing, but directing is easily the most stressful of all of them.
Yeah,
It's hard.
yeah,
It's a tough deal. There have been times, although not often, where I'm sitting on set on any one of a number of films I've directed and gone, I should have just gone and been a farmer. Like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, this is so like, I mean, I'm gonna have like a heart attack here.
I know.
Directing can be trial by fire, and I think if you can't maintain a cool head in that, you just won't last very long. And by and large, I can do it, but there are times where it's very stressful.
Yeah,
Producing, I get satisfaction out of also because it is helpful to have some creative say in the project going out. Because I've been involved in projects where other people have the executive power to make decisions, and we can butt heads. Like if you don't have a singular vision on what that film's going to be, it can become a pretty muddied
yeah,
project. I've been down that road. It's not fun. So being a producer gives you the leverage to say, this is the vision. This is, let's all get on the same page and let's bring this baby to life.
yeah.
So it's fulfilling, but I can't say I get a tremendous amount of joy or artistic satisfaction out of it. So, I each one has its advantages and has its things that I enjoy, but certainly I would say writing, directing, and producing in that order.
Now, how is it as a writer passing off the directing job to someone else? Now, with Escape Room, you wrote it, you directed it, you had full control. Being a perfectionist, which you said earlier on in this interview, is it hard for you to pass off your script and put it into the hands of another director?
It can be, because more often than not, at least in the situations I've been in, it's not like I get to handpick the director.
Yeah,
Sometimes they pick a director where you'll be like, that's a great choice. And other times you're like, I'm not sure I get it. Nothing against them. They've done great work, but I'm not sure I see it for this project. And if they come in with a different vision than you, movies are different than stage plays. And on the stage, the script is like the Bible.
yeah,
In film, a script can be, they'll turn the whole thing inside out. They don't care. So there's times where someone can come in and make a lot of changes to the heart and soul of the story you were trying to tell. And that's happened to me also. And sometimes they make a perfectly fine movie, but you're like, it's not really the story I wanted to tell.
mm-hmm.
Is it easy? No.
No.
But is it the end of the world? Not necessarily. This is film, and it's so hard to get a film made there is satisfaction in seeing, the DNA of your story come to life.
Exactly.
So it's you kind of have to roll with that. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things that happen in the film world that at least have happened to me over the years that just you have to roll with it. I think I'd be more bothered if it happened to be a passion project of mine, like a true passion project of mine. And none of my features to date have been passion projects.
Okay.
They're projects I care deeply about, but it isn't something where it's like, this has to be page by page. I need to get the perfect collaborators. Like, this means the world to me.
Okay.
They Watch means a lot to me. Portal was fun. Escape Room was fun, but none of them have been deeply passionate projects to me. So if something happens where changes come in that aren't necessarily what I would have done, it's not the end of the world. It's okay.
Okay, we're out of time. I just want one last question. They Watch, do you know if it's going to be a theatrical release or if it's going to be a video on demand release whenever that time comes?
Not yet. I know that there's a lot of sales agents who've been reaching out about it already. So I think the producing team in Pennsylvania will have a lot of options to choose from. I would be surprised if it goes theatrical, but I won't say no. Never say never.
Well, you
never know.
You didn't expect it with Escape Room, and that had a little bit of theatrical release.
Well,
so exactly. You never
sure.
know. Anyway,
never
Peter, thank you so much for taking the time you did to talk to us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can get you back once They Watch does come out, and we could talk some more about that when you have some more free time. Again, thank you. This has been a fascinating half hour. Good luck on all your projects moving forward. I loved Escape Room. Between you and me and the rest of the world watching, out of the 3 titles named Escape Room, I liked yours the best. So
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me. It was a blast. I'd love to come back.
Absolutely. It was a blast for us and our viewers as well. Stay safe, guys. Thank you for tuning in. On behalf of Peter Dukes and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.